想问一下 Kenny， 就是当时为什么会想要选择 EAP 这个领域或是这个职业呢？
It's an interesting story because I didn't choose EAP. EAP chose me. So I am not a clinician. I am not a counselor, whereas most people working in EAP are. I started almost by accident. I was in between jobs and was asked to go on a temporary placement at a company just for 1 week. That was actually one of the first EAPs in Canada, the company that I went to work with. So I stayed there 1 week, did my job. They asked me to stay another week. I stayed another week. They asked me to stay another week, and I stayed another week. 18 years later, I was still there. So when I started with the company, I did not know what EAP was, did not know EAP existed. So it was my first time being exposed to any of this. I had studied business administration, sales, marketing, nothing related to psychology or mental health. Now, with the colleagues that I had, we were a very important office. Account managers were psychologists, social workers. Our call center was next door, so we had a lot of clinicians. So I learned a lot about, first, the technical aspects of how we do business, why we're providing these services, how it helps people, right? So the very technical aspect of it. But when you talk to psychologists, when you talk to social workers, you start to understand the psychology behind what we're doing, right? We start to understand how things work. In doing that, you eventually start learning how to quote unquote be a psychologist, right? Understanding how counselors work, the models that we're using, and how people react to that. So over the years, I've learned that from my colleagues. And I had a lot of opportunities because being in a French city, I am originally from Montreal, Canada, worked a lot with our Toronto office. And so you start learning how other people think and how other areas work. And as the company grew, so did my career within the business, which at some point did take me internationally as well when we decided to go global.
那想问他那个成为 EAEF 的 president 的这件事情。
Which follows my career. Once I ended up in Europe, I started working more with Europeans, no longer Canadians or Americans. That's when our organization was always involved with the EAEF. And I started becoming involved with the EAEF. Simply because I worked a lot with, in my role, I worked a lot with the partners. The job that I had was involved in implementing programs. But for me to implement a program in another country, I need a local provider to do it. So because of those relationships, it made sense for me to start getting involved with the EAEF. Now, how did I become president? Once again, by accident.
Another accident?
So the EAEF has elections, and they always look for people to volunteer for positions. A lot of people sometimes are afraid of being the president of an association, but some of the people on the board felt that I would be a good fit at the time. So they encouraged me to run to be president, and that's how I became the president of the EAEF for those 2 years. It's actually 6 years that we do that. It's a long process, but it was because of that, and I was willing to do it because working with the partners, I understood that it was important for the smaller EAPs to have access to knowledge from their peers, from other organizations from different countries. Not only relying on the big global EAPs, the big international EAPs giving you their knowledge, but learning from each other. You might be seen as competitors outside of the association, but within the association, you're actually all partners with each other, because if your competitor does well and innovates, it makes you want to innovate and do better. And the more that you do better, the more that they do better, and at the end, our clients benefit from that. So that friendly competition.